Okay, good morning everybody. Saturday morning. I'm running a couple of minutes later than I was hoping to be. Tim Hortons was disorganized this morning, but I managed to get my breakfast, so I'm ready to go. So off we'll go to our pickup, get the day underway. By the end of today, I will be in Quebec City, and I'm not entirely sure what all the other stops are. I think we do a driving tour of Kingston and go on the Thousand Islands boat cruise, but I will find that out when I meet the tour director. So off we go. So we've completed 3 pickups. We stopped in various places to pick up people across the city of Toronto. We actually started in Mississauga and did 2 pickups in the city of Toronto itself, and now we are headed on our way for our trip. In talking with the tour director, I have discovered that the Kingston driving tour will be on the return leg of the trip on Canada Day. So today we are headed directly for the Thousand Islands boat cruise at Rockport. We'll be making 1 stop along the way for a washroom break. So here we are, we're getting on the highway 401 eastbound at Kennedy Road in Scarborough, which is the eastern end of Toronto. Traffic is nice and light today. It's Saturday morning of the Canada Day long weekend, so there's not a lot of traffic going on in Toronto yet. It does get busier as the day goes on, but first thing in the morning, not so busy at all. The tall buildings you can see here are all apartments. There won't be much in the way of offices in this part of the city. So we're stopping for our first washroom break. We're stopping just east of Toronto, the first rest area east of Toronto at Port Hope, Ontario. And the tour director typically on these type of trips allows 10 minutes for one of these kind of washroom breaks. Now we had, I believe, 50 people on this bus tour. So trying to get 50 people through a place like this in 10 minutes is pretty difficult. Then multiply it by the number of buses that are actually here. You'll see when we pull around into the parking, there are already buses here. Before we leave, at least 5 more buses come in. Very, very busy spot. Canada Day weekend is a lot of buses heading places, particularly doing this same exact kind of trip as what I'm doing, Quebec, Montreal, and Ottawa in 3 days. And you can see another one of the buses from my company here. He is doing the same trip as I am, except in the opposite direction. I'm actually doing the trip reversed. He's doing it in the normal way. So he is off to Kingston as soon as he gets his people on the bus. I don't want to hit any of his people, so I'm just waiting. The Thousand Islands Parkway, we're headed to Rockport. We got off at the Hill Island exit, which is the exit that you can take to go to the United States across the Thousand Islands Bridge. And here we are. We're going to turn into the little village of Rockport. Tiny, tiny little place, right on the shore of the St. Lawrence and the Thousand Islands region. One of many places that you can take a cruise from the Canadian side of the Thousand Islands. There are also places on the US side, of course, that you can take a cruise in this area as well. The Thousand Islands is an area where the Canadian Shield, the large section of Precambrian ancient rock in Ontario and Quebec, runs down into the St. Lawrence River and forms all these tiny little islands. There are actually far more than 1,000 islands in this little area if you count all the little rocky outcroppings out in the river. The Ontario-Quebec border. We're just about to cross into Quebec from Ontario. Sometimes when we have groups on, particularly kids, at this point, we will tell them that they all have to speak French because they are now in Quebec. Also, depending on how gullible we think they are, we'll tell them they have to get your passports out. But of course, Quebec is in Canada and passports are not required to cross the provincial border. Our second washroom stop of the day is going to be made just east of Montreal before St. Hyacinthe, Quebec. It's the first rest area east of Montreal. And the rest areas in Quebec are little more than just toilets. They're nice, they're typically clean, all is good, but there's not much more there than the toilets and a canteen truck. So most often, groups can get in and out of these washrooms much quicker, particularly if there's nobody else around. So you can see it's not very busy. This is St. Hyacinthe, and St. Hyacinthe is a point on Highway 20 where a railway crossing crosses the highway at grade. So there's no grade separation, there's no bridge, there's no anything. It's just lights and bells and the grade crossing right in the middle of the road. It's just coming up here. In Quebec, motor coaches have to stop at railway crossings just like school buses do. In Ontario, the rule is a bit different. We don't have to stop. This is one of the only ones, though, and it says exempt on the sign. You may have seen it there. Exempt from stopping. So now we're about to cross the St. Lawrence River. We are just arriving at Quebec City. In the very west end of the city, we're about to cross on the Pierre-Laporte Bridge. The bridge beside it, you'll see in just a second as we get past this rock, the Iron Bridge. That is the old Quebec Bridge. So we're crossing on the Pont Pierre-Laporte, which was built to expand and allow heavier traffic across, and the old Quebec Bridge on our right, which was built in the early part of the 20th century. It actually carries the railway across, as well as highway lanes. Buses and trucks are not allowed on that bridge. We are only allowed on the Pierre-Laporte. That bridge actually collapsed twice during the manufacturing process. So that is the third bridge in that spot. It is the longest cantilever bridge in the world, from what I understand. So we're just going to head up here. We're going to go off onto Laurier, which will lead us through Sainte Foy and the Sillery into Old Quebec City. Old Quebec. We are at the fortifications. This is the walled part of the city, the upper town. We're passing on the right the edge of the Plains of Abraham. That's the Battlefields Park. It's where the battle between the French and the English occurred in 1759. I'll try and show you more of that on some other clips that I will put together as part of a driving tour. This is just going to be a little taste of the upper town of Old Quebec and driving into the city. We're just going to stop here. The passengers are going to have their dinner at a restaurant here on Chemin Saint-Louis called Café de Paris. It's just up ahead here on the left. And what's going to happen is I'm just stopping here. The tour director is going to go in, let them know that we're in town. He's going to pick up my meal. And then I'm going to take the people down and drop them off so that they can have some free time here in the upper town of Quebec City. So here we are at the Petropass. And I am going to first off park and eat my supper. My tour guide got me my supper already, so I'm going to eat it while it's still warm. and then I will fuel afterwards. Okay, folks, I've eaten my supper, fueled the bus, washed off the buggies. I'm going to head back up into town. I put in 271 liters of fuel. Ooh, I like the color of that light. Go, go, go. Um, 271 liters I put in. I traveled 909 kilometers today. So that works out to 7.8-ish miles per US gallon. That's pretty decent. This park that we're driving around is called George V Park. It's named after the England's King George V. Straight in front of us is the armory, the Manège Militaire. The buses who are parked here, this is again part of the staging area, but it's only a 10-minute zone. And right now somebody is being talked to by the parking authority, because they're not supposed to sit there for that long. So I'm going down here into the parking lot, which has some trailers in it, still left over from the big party that was here a couple of weeks ago. Got a couple of new Prevos in here. A nice bright yellow one. There's one from Coach Canada, Safeway Tours. They operate, Coach Canada operates the Safeway Tours trips. We've picked up the group and we're heading to the hotel. This is upper town of Quebec City. We're just going to show a little bit of the driving part. Again, I apologize for the red flashing light. Oh look, a yellow Lamborghini. Yeah, sometimes you see some fancy cars here. On the left there, that red roofed building is the oldest house in Quebec City. It's still in the French style, whereas most of these buildings have been built by the English over the years. On the right here is the Chateau Frontenac, the major hotel on the cliff overlooking the St. Lawrence River. And straight ahead of us is Samuel de Champlain, the founder of Quebec City. The city was founded in 1608. Well, that was interesting. People say, what's bus driving like? Bus driving can be a pretty good job, but it has its stresses. We showed up at our hotel that we are booked. I'm told that the tour company even added a room this morning. Nobody mentioned to the tour company, apparently, that our rooms were not going to actually be at that hotel. It's at another hotel, clear on the other side of town. When I got to the hotel we were booked into, I had 13 minutes of driving time left. Unfortunately, by the time we got moving and everything else was done, I was somewhat over in my hours. With an explanation, it was less than half an hour. These are the things that sometimes happen. Hopefully, there won't be any problems. Typically, half an hour. If there's a good explanation, we have some allowance for unforeseen circumstances. Personally, I think the tour director should have called and made sure that our rooms were available. Like, called after 3 o'clock and made sure, the room keys were made up and everything, and maybe you would have found out then. I don't know. But anyways, we're at a hotel. I'm done for the night. I'm only about half an hour later than I thought I would be. So the morning time, we are leaving at 8 a.m. See you tomorrow.